Okay, that's right. Nick Dutch back on the camera yet again. Hi there, how the heck's it going? And nope, I'm not going anywhere. So you can sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of the video because Nick Dutch is staying here on YouTube. I know there's still an awful lot of strange ideas out there, strange assumptions that people have made about the New Age world, the occult world, the supernatural, and all the rest of that, but that's just what people do. And unfortunately, despite the fact it infuriates me and frustrates me in every possible way, I've just got to live with that. What I want to do today is talk to you about symbols and trying to find out the hidden or occult meaning of the various different types of symbols. Now, within occultism, there's two main ways of trying to find out what a symbol means. One of them is the academic route, in which you try and study what various cultures have said about a particular symbol, or what a particular symbol represents in terms of mythology or ceremony, for instance. And that just requires reading a lot of books and thinking about what you've read. And the other one is a more contemplative method. The more contemplative method is probably a little more popular for people who are actually in the New Age movement, so to speak. It just is. And essentially what it involves is meditation of sorts. The individual, the practitioner, would enter into what some people call a state of gnosis, which is, by my estimation, just the tranquil, almost religious state of prayer. That's essentially all it is. You know, people have spoken about reach that state of consciousness, but essentially it's the same state of mind that people reach when they do a heck of a lot of prayer. That's the way it just seems to be. Maybe that's why Crowley used the phrase inflame thyself with prayer when he was talking about reaching the state of consciousness whereby strange, miraculous or seemingly miraculous stuff that is believed to be done through occult ritual can actually happen. So if you trained yourself in this state of mind, it becomes a little easier to do one of two things, one would assume. Number one is to send something out into the world to do something, and the other one is to be receptive to other things happening in the world so that you can then find some kind of hidden meaning or hidden interpretation. And essentially that second part is what we're talking about today. When I was younger and in the pagan world and on a face-to-face level, there was one individual who said that he did essentially what he regarded as an occult invocation of the god Odin to teach him what the Hagel rune could possibly mean. Now, the Hagel rune, the way that he was describing it and the way that he understood it, was a bit like the asterisk or the star symbol that you've got on your keyboard. It's a vertical line with two lines which are more or less diagonal crossing. So it looks like a 6 or 8 star made out of 3 lines. And he said, this guy who was doing the talk on that day, that it was Odin who showed him that this was a representation of three-dimensionality. You know, the directions forward, backward, left, right, up and down, a bit like a jack from the game of jacks. However, I'd already worked that out, but I didn't require a occult invocation and bothering the All-Father of humanity with my petty inquiry. Instead, I just thought about the shape, and I thought, what other things are similar to that shape? And I thought about isometric graph paper. Now, I learned about isometric graph paper, I think I was in the early days of secondary school, about the age of 10 or 11. And isometric graph paper is drawn using like 30-degree angles and vertical lines, so that you can more easily draw, let's say, a cube. And you can do those delightful three-dimensional bar graphs that you can now do more easily on, you know, spreadsheet programs these days. But you could draw it, actually draw it, okay? So I wondered whether this individual who was doing this presentation would actually be much better placed in doing some thinking about what he'd learned through his life, through his schooling, when looking at this particular symbol, rather than bothering with the sort of spiritual, sort of contemplative way of trying to analyze a symbol. Obviously, if that was his revelation through that exercise, then obviously great and fine. And yes, one does get interesting, some people call them synchronicities or coincidences, shall we say, between what you seem to discover through meditating on a particular symbol and what you may then discover through reading a few books on the subject of that particular mythology or that particular system of magic and that particular symbol. So it can be rather interesting and intriguing, but I think it's worthwhile doing a lot of the academic research first, because it saves you from the possibility of having some kind of misinterpretation of what you're seeing or what you're experiencing when you're in your prayerful or meditative state of mind and trying to be receptive to anything that might be influencing or affecting the apparent results of your contemplation. Alright, we're human beings. We've got like all of our life experience behind us. Our physical health is oscillating up and down in various different dynamic equilibriums all the time. That's affecting the mind in its own right, because it does, and that's part of humanity we've got to understand. We are in many ways victims of our bodies. So we do have to think with great care. When you're reading books on, let's say, in this particular case, the runes, or basically any variety of symbology, there would often be a mention of, this is the symbol you use for, to heal this part of your body. This is the symbol you use to heal that part of your body. I don't think it's quite that clear cut. I would say that you've got to understand a meaning of that symbol and then correlate through, almost an almost schizophrenic reasoning, connecting ideas here and there to work out which symbol would work best with which particular parts of the body. For instance, to heal your bones, you might want to use the Peorth rune, because some people say the Peorth rune represents death, because it looks like the entrance to a grave mound but drawn on its side. Okay, but it still looks like the entrance to a grave mound where you expect to find human remains, such as bones. So maybe the Peorth rune would be good to meditate on if you want to heal your bones. But what if you haven't actually realized that? What if you haven't, what if your mind had not connected with the idea that the Peorth rune was right for healing your bones? Would you be able to guarantee that there would be some kind of somatic or psychosomatic effect upon the growth of bone tissue if you were to meditate on that particular symbol? I personally would argue no. However, there are lots of people within, the pagan or occult movements who would say that the runes or the symbols themselves have what they call their own energy, which means that you don't need to analyze a symbol, you don't need to find out what it means. All you've got to do is to chant it and visualize it, and hey presto, its effect will happen automatically. I disagree with that. Yes, it does seem that with some symbols you can meditate upon them, and you can get, or seem to get, some kind of meaning which is associated with that particular symbol, which you may find is corroborated later on down the line through picking up a book and reading about that particular symbol and what some people at some time have said. But this expression of the runes have got their own energy seems to be rather false in its own right. In my personal experience, it does appear to be those who've taken a rather literalist interpretation of symbology and pagan religions who have jumped to the conclusion that in this particular case the runes themselves have their own energy or their own meaning, so that you don't have to look them up, you can just meditate on them and visualize them, and then the effect will automatically happen. I just don't believe that one little bit. So some variety of academic learning plus contemplation seems to be the right way of doing things. I don't know, it just seems to be. And using the prayerful state of mind and trying to shift your awareness to try and receive or pick up some variety of meaning, again, seems to be beneficial somehow. Anyway, that's my take on the subject. This has been Nick Dutch, signing out for now. Good fortune, God and or Goddess, and or none of the above bless. Don't let the bastards grind you down, even if they are talking bollocks. Speak to you again soon. Bye for now.